Welcome back to the Deep Dive. When we think about the story we're covering today, most of us, we get a very specific image in our
Oh,
heads.
yeah, the Christmas pageant.
Exactly. You've got the bathrobe, the
Mhm.
tinfoil star that's very uh, gentle, quiet atmosphere. It's the greeting card version.
Right.
But today, we're taking a stack of source material, the text of Matthew chapter 2, Roman history, some archaeology, linguistic studies. We're going to see that the reality well, it was radically different.
It's a jarring shift, really, when you strip away all that tradition and just look at the text itself.
Hmm.
I mean, if you read Matthew 2 without that holiday filter, it doesn't read like a bedtime story. It reads like a high-stakes political thriller.
Totally. We're talking about assassination attempts, international travel, supernatural signals in the sky.
And a refugee crisis. It's intense.
It is. And our mission today is to uncover that gritty reality. We want to understand this clash between a ruthless earthly power and a mysterious divine one.
Mhm.
So let's just jump right in. The opening scene. It's not a silent night, it's panic.
It is. Matthew 2.3 tells us, when King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. Now, that word disturbed, it's doing a massive amount of heavy lifting there.
Right. To get why a whole city would be terrified just because their king heard some news, we have to understand the antagonist of this chapter. We have to get Herod the Great.
Yeah.
So let's unpack him a bit, because in most retellings, he's just this generic bad guy.
He's a cartoon villain, but the historical sources, they paint a picture of someone so much more complex and, frankly, terrifying.
He was incredible and terrible all at once.
That's a great way to put it. Herod was a client king under Caesar Augustus, ruling from about 37 BC to 4 BC. And on one hand, you have to give him credit, he was a genius administrator, a master builder,
He built the massive port at Caesarea Maritima.
an engineering marvel. He expanded the temple in Jerusalem into one of the wonders of the ancient world, built the fortress at Herodium. I mean, the guy wanted a legacy that would last forever.
But on the other hand,
Yeah.
the sources describe a man just defined by a ruthless, violent paranoia.
Exactly. He was constantly afraid of losing his throne. And this wasn't just, some idle worry. He eliminated anyone he saw as a threat.
And anyone really meant anyone. It included his own family.
Oh, absolutely. The notes mention he executed his favorite wife, Miriam Belnay.
He loved her,
Yeah.
but he suspected her of disloyalty,
So he had her executed. He also executed 3 of his own sons, Alexander, Aristobulus, and then Antipater, because he thought they were plotting against him.
there was that grim joke going around at the time, right?
There was a Macrobius satire records that Caesar Augustus himself supposedly said it was safer to be Herod's pig than his son.
Because the Greek words are so similar.
Right, hus for pig, huos for son. The joke being that Herod, who technically followed Jewish dietary laws, wouldn't eat a pig.
But he would happily slaughter his own children.
Chilling, isn't it? So when Matthew says all Jerusalem was disturbed with him, it's not just because the king's in a bad mood.
No. It's because people knew that when Herod got nervous, the streets usually ran red.
Precisely. The atmosphere in Jerusalem wasn't celebration, it was walking on eggshells.
And that just sets the stage perfectly for the inciting incident. You have this paranoid tyrant, and then this group of travelers shows up asking the one question that is guaranteed to set him off.
Verse 2, they ask, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews?"
And that's the trigger. Because King of the Jews, that wasn't just a nickname, that was Herod's actual title.
It was his official title, granted to him by the Roman Senate decades earlier. But here's the catch. Herod wasn't of the royal line of David. He was an Idumean. He wasn't born a king,
He fought for it, politicked for it.
killed for it. So for someone else to be born with that title.
To Herod, this wasn't a religious thing.
No, this was a political coup, a direct challenge to his legitimacy. If there is a born king, then Herod is a fake king.
It's treason.
Simple as that.
So let's look at the people asking these really dangerous questions. We need to talk about the Magi, because here's where we have to do some serious myth busting.
Oh, yeah.
The text does not say 3 kings.
No, it doesn't. And it doesn't give them names either. Balthazar, Melchior, Caspar, that's all much, much later medieval tradition.
So what does the text say?
It just says Magi from the east. The Greek word is magoi.
So what exactly is a magos in this context?
Well, in the first century, Magoi referred to a class of scholars, likely from the Parthian Empire, so think modern-day Persia or Babylon. These were people skilled in astronomy, dream interpretation, ancient wisdom.
They were the kingmakers.
The advisors in the East, absolutely. And this connects back to the Old Testament, doesn't it? If you think about the prophet Daniel.
Right, he was taken into exile in Babylon.
And he rose to become the chief of the wise men, basically the head of the Magi order in the Babylonian court.
So there's a legacy there, a potential connection.
A very strong possibility, yes. Through the Jewish diaspora that stayed in Babylon, these Persian scholars might have had access to Jewish scriptures and prophecies. They were likely familiar with the idea that a great ruler would rise from Judea.
But that journey they took, I mean, looking at the map and the notes, this was not a weekend trip.
Hardly. If they're coming from Babylon or Persia, they would have traveled the Fertile Crescent trade route to avoid the desert.
And that's a journey of what, 800-900 miles?
800 to 900 miles, yeah. On camels or on foot, that's staggering.
That's months of travel. A massive logistical commitment. You don't do that on a whim.
No, you're convinced. They were following this star in the east and were convinced enough to risk everything.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me, the star. The sources break down a few theories on what this thing actually was.
It's one of the great mysteries. Naturalistically, astronomers have pointed to planetary conjunctions.
Like planets lining up.
Exactly. For instance, there was a rare triple alignment of Jupiter and Saturn in 7 BC. And to an ancient astrologer, Jupiter is the king of gods, and Saturn was often associated with Jewish people.
So you get king plus Jews in the sky.
You can see how they would interpret that. Then you have Chinese records of a guest star, a comet or a nova around 5 or 4 BC.
So it could have been a real celestial event.
It could have, but there's a third option that the text itself really seems to point toward. Matthew describes the star moving, and then, and this is the crucial part, standing over the specific place where the child was.
Yeah, that's the part that trips up the natural explanations. Comets and planets don't just hover over a specific house.
Exactly. They're high in the atmosphere. You can't use a star to pinpoint a specific address, so this suggests that Matthew viewed it as something supernatural.
Like the pillar of fire in the Exodus.
A manifestation of divine light given for that specific moment.
Whatever it was, it brought them to Jerusalem. And this leads to what I think is one of the most ironic moments in the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
Herod calls in his own experts, the chief priests, the scribes, and asks them, hey, where's the Messiah supposed to be born?
And notice they don't have to go look it up. They know the answer immediately. They quote Micah 5.2, in Bethlehem, in Judea.
They have the theological data, the scriptural coordinates.
They have it cold.
But, and this is the wild part, they don't go.
No, they don't.
Bethlehem is only 6 miles south of Jerusalem. It's a 2-hour walk.
Right.
So you've got these pagan stargazers who traveled 900 miles across deserts on a hunch, and the religious leaders who have the actual scripture won't walk 6 miles to see if it's true.
It's a devastating contrast, and it raises this huge question about the difference between, intellectual knowledge and actual seeking.
You can know it all.
You can know the Bible backward and forward, be theologically precise, and still miss the point entirely. They were content with their books in Jerusalem, while the outsiders were the ones actually pursuing the king.
That is a heavy thought.
Yeah.
So Herod, being the schemer he is, sends the Magi to Bethlehem. He says, go find him so I can come worship him too.
A deadly lie. He's just using them as his reconnaissance team. Find the target so he can eliminate it.
So the Magi leave, the star reappears, and it leads them to a house. And it's worth noting the text says house, not a stable.
Right. By this point, some time has passed. The nativity scene kind of compresses everything into one night, but he's likely a toddler by now. The Greek word used is paidion, child, not infant.
They go in, and they engage in proskuneo.
Yes, the Greek word for worship, but it literally means to prostrate oneself, to kiss the ground.
An act of complete submission.
These high-ranking, wealthy scholars are bowing down to a toddler in a peasant house.
And then they unpack the gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. We've heard that list a million times, but why these specific things?
Well, they're standard for royalty, but they carry heavy symbolism here. Gold is obvious, it's for a king. Frankincense was an expensive incense used in the temple by priests.
So king and priest, but myrrh. That's the weird one.
It is. Myrrh was a perfume, but its primary use was in embalming, for preparing bodies for burial.
It's a bit morbid to give a baby embalming fluid.
It is, unless you understand that his purpose is to die. So you have king, priest, and sacrifice, all in 3 gifts. It also echoes Isaiah 60, which speaks of the nations bringing gold and frankincense to the Lord.
Signifying his global importance.
Exactly. But then the tone just shifts on a dime. From adoration to escape, they get a warning in a dream. Don't go back to Herod.
And they listen. They defy the king of Judea to obey a dream.
which leaves Herod waiting. And while he's waiting, Joseph gets his own dream. Get up, flee to Egypt.
This starts the next section, the flight to Egypt. Now, historically, this makes perfect sense.
It does. Egypt was a Roman province, but it was outside Herod's jurisdiction. His soldiers couldn't cross that border.
And there was a large Jewish community there, right, in Alexandria.
Massive. They can just blend in and be safe.
But the text says this happened to fulfill a prophecy. Out of Egypt I called my son, from Hosea 11:1.
And this is a tricky one for modern readers, because if you go back and read Hosea 11, it's not a prediction about the future Messiah.
No, it's a historical statement. It's looking back at the Exodus.
Exactly. It's talking about God rescuing the nation of Israel from slavery. So how can Matthew claim Jesus fulfilled it?
So what's he doing?
He's using a technique called typology. He's not saying Hosea predicted Jesus directly. He's saying that Jesus is the true Israel.
It's like history rhyming.
That's a great way to think about it. It's a reenactment. Just as the nation of Israel went down to Egypt and came back up, God's Son is reenacting that history. But where Israel often failed, Jesus is going to succeed. Matthew is telling us this is the new Exodus.
And while they're escaping, things in Bethlehem turn.
Woo!
Tragic. Herod realizes he's been ghosted by the Magi.
He's furious, and he orders the death of all boys in Bethlehem and the vicinity who are 2 years old and under.
The massacre of the innocents. It's horrific. And that age cutoff, 2 years, that aligns with what he learned from the Magi about when the star appeared.
Right. He wasn't taking any chances.
Now, a lot of people ask, and the sources bring this up, if this happened, why isn't it in other history books? Josephus hated Herod, he documented all his crimes, but he doesn't mention this.
And that's a valid historical question. But we have to look at the scale. Bethlehem wasn't a city. It was a tiny village. A few hundred people, maybe?
So the number of male children under 2 would have been, what, 10, 20?
Estimates range from maybe 10 to 30, which is an absolute tragedy, obviously.
Of course.
But we have to view it through the lens of the Roman world. In the grand, bloody scope of Herod's reign, where he's executing wives, sons, high priests, hundreds of enemies, the death of a dozen peasant children in a tiny village.
It wouldn't make the headlines.
Sadly, no. It wouldn't destabilize the region. It was sadly consistent with his character, even if it didn't register on the imperial radar.
And Matthew connects this tragedy to Jeremiah 31, Rachel weeping for her children.
Yes, and this is deeply symbolic. Rachel, Jacob's wife, was buried near Bethlehem, and Jeremiah originally wrote that verse about the mothers of Israel weeping as their children were being led away into exile in Babylon.
So it's that pattern again.
Matthew sees the pattern repeating. The mothers of Bethlehem are weeping just as the mothers of the exile did. It links this new sorrow all the way back to the patriarchs. He's being very honest that this story has a body count.
So Herod eventually dies in 4 BC. The coast is clear, sort of. Joseph gets another dream to go back, but he doesn't go back to Bethlehem,
No. He hears that Archelaus is now reigning in Judea,
Herod's son.
one of his surviving sons. And apparently, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. He was known for being brutal and unstable. So Joseph is right to be afraid. Going back to Judea is basically putting the child in range of Herod 2.0.
So he diverts. He goes north to Galilee to a town called Nazareth.
And we need to set the scene for Nazareth. This isn't the suburbs. Galilee was considered the boondocks by the elites in Jerusalem.
And Nazareth itself.
Archaeology shows it was a tiny hamlet, maybe 300 people.
Yeah.
Subsistence farmers, it was nowhere. They even had a distinct accent that Judeans would mock.
It was not a badge of honor to be from Nazareth.
And this leads to the final puzzle in the chapter. Matthew says this happened, so was fulfilled what was spoken through the prophets. He will be called a Nazarene.
But if you search the Old Testament for that verse,
So
so what's going on? Did he just make it up?
no, scholars have two main theories. First, it's likely a wordplay. The Hebrew word for branch is netzer. And in Isaiah 11, there's a famous prophecy about a branch growing out of the roots of Jesse Rosura.
And Nesser sounds a lot like Nazareth.
Exactly. So Matthew is saying he is the man from Branchtown, in a sense. He's the fulfillment of the Netzer prophecy hidden in the name of his town.
Okay, that's the linguistic theory. What's the other one?
The second is that Nazarene was basically slang for someone despised. Remember later in the Gospels when Nathanael asks, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?"
Right, it was a punchline.
So Matthew might be summarizing the theme of the prophets, like Isaiah 53 or Psalm 22, which say the Messiah would be despised and rejected. By growing up in Nazareth, Jesus embodies that from the start.
That makes a lot of sense.
Ah.
So let's zoom out. We've gone from the courts of Herod to the trade routes of the east to Egypt, and finally to this tiny village in the hills of Galilee.
It's a sweeping narrative. And the big picture here is this massive conflict. You have the kingdom of Herod, the kingdoms of men. It's loud, it builds big monuments, but it's paranoid. It relies on force to survive.
And then you have the kingdom of God, represented by this child.
Right. It's vulnerable, it's hidden, it's on the run, dependent on dreams. And yet, Herod is the one who's terrified. The baby is the threat.
It really flips the script on what power looks like.
And think about the seekers we talked about, the insiders, the priests in Jerusalem. They have all the information 6 miles away. They know the truth intellectually, but they stay comfortable.
While the outsiders, the magi, with limited information and a 900-mile journey, they're the ones who actually find the king.
It raises a provocative question for us, doesn't it? Is it possible to be so close to the truth that you just take it for granted? I mean, you can have the scriptures on your shelf, know all the stories, and yet be spiritually stagnant. Meanwhile, someone from completely outside your tradition might be pursuing God with a passion that puts you to shame.
That's a heavy thought to leave on. The difference between knowing the coordinates and actually making the journey.
Precisely. It's the difference between information and transformation.
Well, that is our deep dive into Matthew chapter 2, a story of survival, prophecy, and the lengths God goes to preserve his plan in a hostile world. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.